Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that's kind of all around us, really, sustainable building practices. You sent in this guide from the U.S. Green Building Council, their Bible on LED certification, and the core concepts behind green buildings. We're going to try to distill it down to the need to know stuff for the really important stuff and what's just plain fascinating.
I think most people assume this is like a niche topic, but it's really anything but. We spend almost all our lives in buildings, so how they're designed, how they're built has a huge impact on us, but on the planet too.
Yeah, that's true. So let's start with the why. Why should we care about green buildings? Is it just about saving a few trees?
Oh, it's way bigger than that. Buildings are resource hogs. Did you know that buildings consume 74% of all electricity in the U.S.? And the construction industry generates mountains of waste. We're talking billions of tons of debris every single year.
Okay, wow. Those are some pretty sobering stats. Sounds like a pretty massive problem, really. But the guide you sent in doesn't just dwell on the negative, right?
Exactly. Green building is about turning that problem into an opportunity. It's about creating spaces that are healthier, more efficient, more profitable even.
More profitable. So it's not just some hippy-dicky feel-good thing. There's a solid business case for going green.
Absolutely. Green buildings tend to have lower operating costs, higher property values. They even attract higher rents sometimes. It's a win-win-win for the planet, for people, for your wallet even.
I like the sound of that. The guide mentions this idea of a triple bottom line. It's kind of like a Venn diagram, right? Where the environment and social equity and the economy all overlap.
Exactly. The term triple bottom line was actually coined by John Elkington in his book Cannibals with Forks back in 1998. It argues that companies should be focusing on social and environmental concerns just as much as profits. And in the world of building, that means creating spaces that are good for people, good for the planet, and good for the bottom line.
Right. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's not just about swapping out light bulbs. It's a whole new way of thinking about buildings. How do we actually translate that into real world action?
That's where LED comes in. Leadership in energy and environmental design. It's like a roadmap for making buildings more sustainable.
I know you mentioned LED before, but I always thought it was just for fancy skyscrapers or really modern buildings.
Not at all. There are different LED rating systems for all sorts of buildings, homes, schools, hospitals, even entire neighborhoods. It's a really versatile system.
So how does it work? Is it like a pass-fail test?
More like a point system. Buildings earn points for different criteria they meet, things like energy efficiency, water conservation, indoor air quality, even the materials they use. And those points translate to different levels of certification, certified, silver, gold, and platinum.
Oh, so the higher you climb, the greener the building. But isn't that a little rigid? I mean, technology changes so fast. Does LED keep up?
That's actually one of the most impressive things about LE. It's constantly evolving. The USGBC updates the standards regularly to reflect the newest technologies, best practices. So it's not static, it's constantly pushing the industry forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so LE provides the how-to, but the guide also talks about a new way of thinking that underlies green building. Can you kind of unpack that a little?
Sure. It's a shift from just checking boxes to really understanding how a building interacts with its environment and the people inside it, thinking holistically.
Holistically. That sounds a bit abstract. Can you give me a concrete example?
Of course. The guide talks about this concept called systems thinking. It recognizes that a building is a complex system with interconnected parts. So a seemingly small decision in one area can have ripple effects throughout the whole project, like the type of windows you choose. That'll impact your heating and cooling needs, which can then influence the size and efficiency of your HVAC system, and even furniture choices.
Yeah. Okay, so you can't just swap out the light bulbs and call it a day, right? You have to think about the big picture and how all those pieces fit together. What other big ideas are part of this new way of thinking?
Another crucial one is life cycle thinking. Thinking about the entire life of a building, from sourcing the raw materials to its eventual demolition or reuse. What's the environmental impact at each stage? Can we design for disassembly and reuse? Can we repurpose existing buildings through adaptive reuse to reduce the need for new construction?
Right, so it's not just about what happens during a building's lifetime, but it's also about its impact before and after. That's a pretty big shift in perspective.
It is. And finally, there's the integrated process, the idea that everyone involved in a project needs to be working together from the beginning. architects, engineers, contractors, even the people who will be using the building.
Yeah, that reminds me of that story in the guide about the master builder of the past, someone who really understood all aspects of a project.
Exactly. Yeah. We need to bring back that holistic approach to design and construction, where everyone collaborates to create the best possible outcome for the building, for the environment, and for the people who will be using it.
I love that idea. Okay, so we've covered the why of green buildings, the how-to with LED, and this new way of thinking. I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty now. What are some specific strategies that can actually make a building more sustainable?
Well, first up, location, location, location. Where you build has a huge impact on a project's sustainability. Choosing the right site is crucial.
Oh, so it's not just about what happens inside the building.
No, not at all. Yeah. Building on a brownfield site, land that's been previously developed, can actually be a way to improve the environment. While building on virgin land fragments habitats and can disrupt ecosystems. So the choice of location, it really has a huge impact before you even lay the first brick.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. So choosing the right location is like setting the stage for a sustainable building. But what happens once that location is chosen? What are some other strategies for making a building more environmentally friendly?
There are so many. Let's start with one that often gets overlooked. Transportation. Thinking big picture again. Building in walkable, transit-oriented locations. That can drastically reduce a project's carbon footprint.
Right. Because if people can easily walk, bike, or take public transit, you're reducing all those emissions from cars. But what about for buildings that aren't in those ideal locations? What else can be done?
Well, there are still plenty of options. Encouraging carpooling, providing electric vehicle charging stations, even just implementing a telecommuting policy. All of those can help, contribute to a greener transportation footprint.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So location, transportation, those are two big pieces of the puzzle. But what about all the resources buildings use once they're up and running? Water, energy, materials, that kind of stuff. Where do we even begin?
Well, let's start with water efficiency. This is an area where buildings can make a huge difference, especially considering how much water is used in their operations.
The guide had a pretty mind-blowing statistic about water use in office buildings. Something about commuting.
Oh, yeah. This one always gets me. A typical office building uses more water for its workers to commute than for its actual operations.
Really? That's wild. I guess it really does highlight the impact of transportation, right? So what about once people are actually inside the building? What are some, practical tips for using water more efficiently?
The guide suggests a whole bunch of strategies, but let's stick to some of the most impactful ones. For instance, installing low-flow fixtures in bathrooms and kitchens can significantly reduce water use. Toilets, faucets, shower heads. It's small changes, but they can add up to big savings.
Right. Those are things that, anyone could implement, even in their own homes. What about using alternative water sources? Is that even feasible for buildings?
Oh, absolutely. Rainwater harvesting systems are becoming more and more popular. Imagine, collecting rainwater from the roof and using it to flush toilets or irrigate the landscaping. That's the kind of innovation we're talking about.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And I've also heard of gray water systems. Isn't that where you reuse water from sinks and showers?
Exactly. It's a great way to reduce waste and lessen the strain on municipal water systems.
Yeah.
And then there's xeriscaping, using drought-tolerant plants for landscaping. It's a simple but really effective way to reduce outdoor water use.
Wow, so many options. I'm starting to see that sustainable building is really about looking at things from a different angle, finding creative solutions. But we haven't even touched on energy yet, and I know that's a big one.
It is. Let's dive into the world of energy efficiency. This is a massive topic with a huge potential for positive impact. Remember those statistics from earlier about how much energy buildings consume? We can make big strides in reducing that consumption by focusing on something called energy intensity, getting the most out of every single unit of energy that we use.
Yeah, the guide even had a helpful pie chart showing how energy is typically used in an office building. And it showed that heating, cooling, and lighting represent a huge chunk of the building's energy consumption.
Exactly, and those visualizations are so important because they can help us see where we can make the biggest difference. So, when we look at that pie chart, it's clear that we need to target those areas: heating, cooling, and lighting. And there are some really great strategies for doing just that.
Okay, I'm all ears. What can we do to improve energy efficiency in those areas?
One fundamental strategy is improving the building envelope, the barrier between the indoor and outdoor environments. Think of it like a jacket for your building. By using better insulation, installing high-performance windows and making sure the building is properly sealed, to prevent air leaks, you can drastically reduce energy loss and the amount of energy you need to heat and cool the space.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty straightforward concept, right? Keep the heat in during the winters, keep the cool air in during the summer. Are there other ways, maybe more like high-tech ways to improve energy efficiency? What about all those smart gadgets I keep hearing about?
Yeah, technology is playing a huge role in this. Smart building technologies, like smart thermostats and lighting controls, can actually learn your patterns and automatically adjust settings based on occupancy and time of day. They can even connect to weather forecasts to optimize energy use.
Oh, so it's like having a building that thinks for itself. That's amazing. What about the energy itself? Are there ways to shift away from, like, fossil fuels and towards more sustainable sources?
Absolutely. Installing solar panels on the roof or even integrating them into the building facade is becoming more common. And in some locations, geothermal energy using the Earth's natural heat can be a great option for heating and cooling.
Okay, so we're improving the building envelope, optimizing HVAC systems, switching to more efficient lighting, incorporating smart technologies, even harnessing renewable energy sources. It's a multifaceted approach, but it sounds like the potential for energy savings is huge.
It really is. And it's not just about saving energy, it's about reducing our reliance on fossil fuels and creating a more sustainable energy future.
Absolutely. So far, we've covered location and transportation, water efficiency, energy efficiency. What's next on our green building checklist?
Let's talk about something that we all interact with every day. Materials. The choices we make about the materials we use to build our structures, those have a big impact on the environment.
Yeah, I remember seeing a display at a green building conference once. It showed all these different materials and their environmental footprints. It was really eye-opening to see how much variation there was.
Exactly. We have to go beyond the, familiar reduce, reuse, recycle mantra. It's about making more conscious choices from the beginning.
So what are some of the key considerations when it comes to choosing sustainable building materials?
Well, first, we have to think about the environmental impact of the materials themselves. Where are they sourced from? How are they manufactured? And what happens to them at the end of their life?
The guide mentioned this concept of embodied energy, which I thought was fascinating. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. Think about a simple wooden chair, right? The embodied energy of that chair, it includes the energy it took to cut down the tree, transport the wood, manufacture the chair, and even ship it to the store. So before that chair is even sitting in your living room, it already has an energy footprint.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So choosing materials with lower embodied energy can make a big difference. Are there other things to consider besides embodied energy?
Absolutely. We need to think about the sourcing of materials. Using locally sourced materials can reduce transportation emissions and, support local economies. Utilizing recycled materials gives new life to existing resources, reduces the demand for virgin materials. And incorporating rapidly renewable materials like bamboo or cork can help lessen our reliance on, finite resources.
Right. I've also seen some really cool projects that use salvaged materials, reclaiming elements from old buildings and giving them a new purpose. It's a great way to reduce waste and, preserve a little bit of history, too.
That's a great example of creative reuse. It's all about thinking outside the box, finding innovative ways to minimize our impact on the planet.
This has been an awesome overview of sustainable building practices. We've covered so much from the big picture concepts to the really specific details of choosing the right location, conserving water, making the most of our energy use, even selecting sustainable materials. But I'm realizing there's one crucial element we haven't even touched on yet, the people who actually use these buildings.
You're right. We can't talk about sustainable buildings without talking about the people who live in them, work in them, learn in them. And that brings us to our last topic for today. Indoor environmental quality, or IEQ, all about creating spaces that are not only good for the planet, but good for the people inside.
Right. Okay, so this is where the people part of that triple bottom line really comes into play. But what exactly does indoor environmental quality even mean? Is it just making sure the building isn't drafty?
It's much more than that. IEQ encompasses a bunch of factors, from air quality and ventilation to thermal comfort, lighting, and even acoustics. It's about creating spaces that are healthy, comfortable, and conducive to well-being.
Yeah, the guide had a pretty shocking statistic about indoor air quality that I think we need to mention. It says that indoor air can actually be way more polluted than outdoor air, which seems kind of counterintuitive.
It is surprising, but it's true. We think about outdoor air pollution as the bigger problem, but indoor air can be just as bad, if not worse, especially in poorly ventilated buildings.
Yeah, okay. Definitely don't want to be breathing that in. So, what can be done to improve indoor air quality in buildings?
One of the most important things is proper ventilation, making sure that there's enough fresh air circulating throughout the building. This helps to, remove pollutants, control humidity, just create a healthier indoor environment.
So it's not just about sealing up the building to prevent drafts, right? It's also about making sure there's a constant flow of fresh air. What about the materials themselves? Can they impact indoor air quality?
Definitely. A lot of building materials like paints, adhesives, even some furniture can release harmful chemicals called VOCs, volatile organic compounds, into the air.
Right. I've heard of VOCs. They're the reason why you have to, open all the windows when you paint a room, right?
Exactly. Choosing materials that are low in VOCs can significantly improve the air quality inside and, reduce the risk of health problems. And it's not just about the materials. It's also about how they're installed and maintained.
Right. I've definitely been in buildings where you can smell the glue or the new carpet. Not exactly a pleasant experience. What else can we do to create a healthier indoor environment?
Controlling moisture is crucial to prevent mold growth, which can have serious health consequences. This means making sure the building is properly sealed and that any leaks or moisture problems are addressed quickly.
Yeah, I remember seeing those dehumidifier signs in the basements of some older buildings. It seems like moisture control can be a challenge, especially in those older structures.
It can be. That's why it's so important to incorporate moisture control strategies into both new construction and renovations. Addressing potential moisture problems from the outset can help prevent mold growth and ensure a healthier indoor environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've talked about air quality, ventilation, moisture control. Are there other aspects of IEQ that we should be thinking about?
Well, we also need to think about things like thermal comfort, making sure the temperature is comfortable for the occupants. Lighting is really important too. Natural light is ideal. But we also need to make sure that there's adequate artificial lighting that's energy efficient and, doesn't create glare. And lastly, we need to consider acoustics, minimizing noise pollution and creating spaces that are conducive to focus and concentration.
It sounds like creating a truly healthy and comfortable indoor environment involves a lot of different factors. It's not just about one thing. It's about considering all these elements and how they work together.
Exactly. And just like with all aspects of sustainable building, there are always, innovative solutions emerging all the time. Like some companies are developing smart windows now that can automatically adjust their tint to control glare and heat gain. And there are new types of acoustic panels that can absorb sound and reduce noise pollution.
Wow, it's amazing to see how technology is being used to create healthier and more comfortable indoor environments. But it's not just about technology, right? There's also that human element to all of this.
Absolutely. We need to consider the needs and preferences of the people who will be using the building. And we have to involve them in the design process to make sure we're creating spaces that really meet their needs.
Right, because a building can be, the most technologically advanced structure in the world. But if it's not comfortable or enjoyable to be in, then it's not really serving its purpose.
Exactly. Ultimately, sustainable building is about creating spaces that are good for people, good for the planet, and good for the bottom line. And that means considering all these factors, from location and materials to energy use and indoor environmental quality, and just finding creative, innovative solutions that work for everyone.
This has been an amazing deep dive into sustainable building practices, from the big picture concepts to the nitty-gritty details. It's clear that we can create buildings that are better for the environment, better for people, and better for our wallets even. But I'm also realizing that this is a huge field, and it's constantly changing. There's so much more to learn.
You're absolutely right. The world of sustainable building is full of passionate, innovative people who are always pushing the boundaries, coming up with new ideas. And it's not just happening in big cities or high-profile projects. It's happening everywhere, in communities of all sizes. So if you're interested in learning more, there are tons of resources online and in your local community, too.
Great advice. I'm definitely feeling inspired to keep exploring this topic. But before we wrap up part one of this deep dive, I want to touch on something that's been on my mind throughout our conversation. We've talked about LED and all these, incredible strategies for sustainable building. But who's actually driving this movement forward? Is it just a bunch of architects and engineers?
That's a great question. And it leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive. We've explored the why and the how-to of green building. Now let's get into the who, the organizations and frameworks that are, shaping this industry and making all of this possible. So you're curious about who's really behind this whole green building movement.
Yeah. We've covered a lot of ground already, with LED and all, but I'm wondering about the bigger picture now. Like, who are the big players shaping this whole industry?
Well, any conversation about, key players has to start with the U.S. Green Building Council, USGBC. We've talked about their role in developing LED, but they do so much more than that.
Right. The guide mentions that they're a nonprofit. They're not just about profit margins, right? They're really invested in promoting sustainable practices across the board.
That's a really key distinction. Their mission is to transform the building industry, to make it more sustainable, environmentally responsible. And they're not just, setting standards. They're out there advocating, educating, researching, trying to change the way we think about and build our environments.
Wow, so they're really leading the charge. Are there other organizations that are working on that kind of scale?
Oh, there are organizations all over the world working toward these same goals. The guide mentions the World Green Building Council. It's a network of green building councils from all over the globe, all collaborating to advance these practices on an international level.
That's amazing. It feels like a real shift in how we approach construction and development now.
It really is a global movement. And it's not just these big organizations either. There are tons of individuals, architects, designers, contractors, even building owners who are embracing these practices and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah, I love that. It's a real grassroots movement with people at all levels contributing to a more sustainable future.
Absolutely. It's about collective action and, a shared commitment to creating a better world. Now, you also mentioned frameworks earlier. LED is a fantastic tool, but it's not the only one out there shaping these practices.
Yes. Right. The guide talked about building codes and standards as another important piece of the puzzle. I always thought building codes were just about safety, like making sure a building won't, fall down.
That's a common misconception.
Huh.
Building codes and standards do cover safety, health, accessibility, for sure, but they're increasingly incorporating sustainability into their requirements as well. It's not just about making sure the building stands up. It's about making sure it's built in a way that benefits the planet and the people who use it.
So are we seeing more green building codes being adopted as awareness about all this grows?
Absolutely. We're seeing more and more green building codes and standards being adopted at local, state, even national levels. These codes address a wide range of issues, from energy efficiency and water conservation to the materials used and how waste is managed.
The guide specifically mentions the International Green Construction Code. What is that exactly?
The IGCC is a model code that provides a comprehensive framework for green building. It covers everything from site selection and energy use to indoor environmental quality and even the building's impact on the surrounding community. It's like a blueprint that local governments can use to create their own green building codes, tailored to their specific needs and priorities.
Oh, so it's like a template for greener building practices, helping to standardize sustainability across different regions. Are there other frameworks besides LEED and these building codes that are worth mentioning?
Oh, there are actually a bunch of green building certifications and rating systems out there. Each has its own focus and criteria, but they all share that goal of promoting sustainable building practices.
The guide mentions BREEAM as one example. Can you tell us a bit more about that one?
BREEAM stands for Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method. It's a widely used sustainability assessment method for buildings. It's actually one of the oldest and most established green building rating systems in the world.
So kind of like a global counterpart to LEED.
You could say that. BREEAM is used in over 70 countries and has certified thousands of buildings worldwide. It really shows how global this movement is. It's really inspiring to see all these different frameworks and organizations working together, each playing their part.
It is. It seems like this push for greener buildings is really gaining some serious momentum. But I'm curious about the financial side of things. We've talked about the benefits, but is it actually cost-effective to build this way? I can imagine all these green features and technologies adding a pretty hefty price tag.
That's a question that comes up a lot, understandably. The good news is that green building is becoming more and more affordable. In fact, a lot of studies show that green buildings can actually save you money over their lifespan.
Really? So the upfront cost might be higher, but you end up making up for it down the road.
Exactly. Remember we talked about those lower operating costs? If you're using less energy and water, you'll naturally save money on your utility bills. And those savings add up over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. The guide also mentions that green buildings can have higher property values and attract higher rents. Why is that?
Green buildings are seen as, more desirable, more prestigious. They offer healthier, more comfortable environments for occupants, which makes them attractive to tenants and buyers. And because they're built to last, with durable, high-quality materials, they tend to hold their value better over time.
So it's not just a feel-good thing, it's a smart financial decision, too. Are there other financial incentives out there to encourage green building?
Definitely. Governments and utility companies are increasingly offering tax breaks, rebates, grants to support sustainable construction and renovation. Investors are also recognizing the value of these buildings, making it easier to get financing for these types of projects. The financial case is getting stronger all the time. It's really a win-win for the planet and for your wallet.
It's amazing how sustainability and profitability are aligning now. This shift in thinking has to be driving some incredible innovations in the building industry, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing so many cutting-edge technologies and strategies emerging that are reshaping the future of sustainable buildings.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. Get ready for some seriously mind-blowing stuff.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with those mind-blowing innovations.
All right, get ready for some seriously cool stuff. It's amazing to see how, technology and creativity are coming together to, build a more sustainable future for our world.
Yeah, the guide highlighted net zero energy buildings as a real game changer. But honestly, it sounds a bit like science fiction to me.
I know, right? It might sound futuristic, but these buildings are actually becoming a reality. They're designed to produce as much energy as they consume over the course of a year, basically powering themselves.
Whoa, so it's like a building that runs completely on renewable energy. How is that even possible?
It's a combination of strategies. First, they're built to be super energy efficient. They're squeezing every bit of performance out of their design. We're talking super insulated walls, high-tech windows that adjust to the sunlight, and smart systems that monitor and optimize energy use, in real time.
Okay, so minimizing energy waste is the first step. But even the most efficient buildings still need some energy to run, right?
Right. And that's where renewable energy sources come. In net zero buildings, often incorporate solar panels, sometimes even integrated right into the building facade, turning the whole structure into a giant energy generator.
So they're literally pulling energy from the sun. That's incredible. Are there any real world examples of net zero buildings, ones that are actually working?
Yeah, actually, there are quite a few.
Yes.
And they're popping up all over the world. The guide mentioned the Bullitt Center in Seattle. It's a 6-story office building that's considered one of the greenest commercial buildings on the planet.
What makes it so special?
Well, the Bullitt Center is designed to be a living building, which means it's not just net zero energy, but also net zero water and waste.
Wait, hold on, net zero everything? So it generates its own energy, manages its own water, and even deals with its own waste. That's next level.
It is. It collects rainwater, treats its own wastewater, composts its waste, and uses, non-toxic materials throughout. It's a really remarkable example of what's possible when we push the boundaries of design.
Yeah, it sounds like a building that exists in perfect harmony with its environment. Okay, I'm officially blown away. What other innovations are we seeing?
Well, one trend that's really gaining traction is biophilic design.
Oh yeah, I've heard that term. But I always picture those green walls you see in some offices.
Yeah, living walls are definitely a part of it, but biophilic design is way more than that.
Yeah.
It's about incorporating elements of nature into the built environment, in a holistic way.
Yeah.
Recognizing that humans have this innate connection to the natural world.
So it's more than just adding a few plants here and there. What else does it involve?
Well, think about natural light, views of nature, water features, natural textures, even using nature-inspired shapes and patterns in the building's design. It's about creating spaces that feel connected to the outdoors, even when you're inside.
Right. I can see how that would be so beneficial, just bringing the outdoors in.
Yeah.
But is there actual evidence that this stuff works?
Oh, yeah. Studies have shown that biophilic design can actually reduce stress, improve mood, even boost creativity. It can even help people heal faster in hospitals. It's really fascinating how our connection to nature can impact our well-being, even in these subtle ways.
Wow, so I'm seeing how this all connects now. Sustainability isn't just about saving energy or reducing waste. It's about creating spaces that are good for people and the planet.
Exactly. And there's another really cool trend that's emerging that captures that idea. The circular economy.
I've heard that term, but I'm not sure I understand how it applies to buildings.
So it's about moving away from that, take, make, dispose model that we're so used to,
Yeah.
and moving towards a more cyclical system where resources are kept in use for as long as possible.
Right, so it's like a closed loop, reducing waste and reusing materials over and over again.
Exactly. And in the building industry, this means designing buildings for disassembly so that materials can be easily recovered and reused at the end of the building's life. It also means using more, recycled and recyclable materials in the first place.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a much more sustainable way to think about construction and demolition.
It is. And it's a trend that's gaining traction as we become more aware of the finite nature of our resources and the impact we're having on the planet.
It feels like we're really on the verge of a revolution in the building industry, moving away from those wasteful practices of the past and towards this more circular, sustainable model. What role is technology playing in all of this? Are there specific innovations you're excited about?
Oh, so many. We're seeing incredible advancements in building technologies that are making sustainable buildings smarter, more efficient, and more responsive to the people who use them.
The guide talked about smart building technologies. What are some examples of how that's being used?
Well, think about sensors, data analytics, automation, all working together to optimize building performance. These systems can monitor and control everything, from energy use and lighting to temperature, ventilation, even security.
It's like giving a building its own brain. It can,
Right.
learn and adapt, making real-time adjustments to be more efficient, more comfortable.
Exactly. Smart building technologies are already having a big impact, especially in large commercial buildings.
Yeah.
But we're also starting to see them in homes and smaller buildings, which is exciting. It's making it easier for everyone to benefit from these advancements. And it's not just about individual buildings operating more efficiently. Technology is also connecting buildings to the grid, allowing them to share energy and even contribute to a more, resilient and decentralized energy system.
So we're moving toward a future where buildings aren't just consumers of energy, but they're also producers, active participants in the grid. It's like this incredible web where buildings are working together to create a more sustainable future.
That's a fantastic way to think about it. It really is a vision of a more sustainable and interconnected energy future, where buildings are at the heart of it all.
This has been such an amazing exploration of innovation and sustainable building. From net zero energy and biophilic design to the circular economy and smart technologies, it's clear that the future of construction is full of potential. And we can all do our part, whether it's advocating for greener building codes, supporting businesses that prioritize sustainability, or even just making more conscious choices in our own homes. Every decision makes a difference.
I completely agree. And remember, this is a constantly evolving field, so stay curious, stay informed, and let's keep pushing for a more sustainable future together.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We hope you learned something new today and that you're feeling inspired to explore the world of sustainable building. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep building a better world.